Hello. Hi. Hello, all the people. Thank you for joining. Thank you for waving. I am waiting for my wonderful co host to get here, and we will get started with this week's episode so that we can kind of shed some light on some things, have some conversations about some things, and then go from there. And so we'll be starting with our episode this week. Normally we kind of just post it, but this time we decided we needed to kind of. So as Kristian joins me, we'll start officially. All right, we're ready to rock. Yeah,
We're in the room, folks.
in the room, in the space.
In the space. Come on in the room.
Come on in the room.
What? That's church.
That is church. That's church. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. And as we continue to have people joining us, we'll go from there. We are wanting to make sure that we kind of speak to some things. So if you do not already know, I am Quo Johnson. I'm the Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera, hence taking over the Dallas Opera. And I am joined by...
I am Kristian Roberts, Director of Education for the Dallas Opera. And of
Yes.
course, we're here for our very first live episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian.
And Quo. We'll always do it. We'll continue to do
We're
it.
going to continue to do it. I don't care if we get to know you, it's our thing.
That's what we do.
So we do. We want to give people a little bit more time before we sort of dive in.
And while we do that, kind of want to give light, give space, give honor, give acknowledgement to the many things that are going on and then the many different parties kind of participating in the protests, participating in healing spaces, participating in their own way of expressing, right? Not want to tell people what to do.
No judging.
Yeah, not want to tell people what to do, but kind of ensuring that as we go through this process that we acknowledge and understand or gain an understanding of why things happen the way they happen. Not gonna tell you what to do. Yeah, you do you. But it's definitely a matter of getting to the root as opposed to kind of paying attention to the symptoms, right? And
Absolutely.
which of those things are actually going to assist us in the future or, actually get some progress going. So we'll start with that.
Actually, some action instead of just empty words and platitudes.
Empty words and
I said
facts.
what I said.
Um, I like to, I guess, I like the sage, hold for five.
Yeah.
And what that means for holding for five. For those who are here and those who are joining, as you hop in and out, feel free to ask questions. We'll be talking about specific topics for today. And normally what we do in sharing, taking the stage with Kristian and Quo. But, as we catch them, we'll go through that process.
Absolutely. Yo, Karen Slack is on. Hi, Kiki. Accept my friend request on Facebook. I feel a little insulted. I'm totally kidding, sis. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. I know everybody's busy.
Ma'am.
Hey, we gotta laugh. Sometimes my mother says you laugh to keep from crying, and some days you just have to remember to laugh.
Sometimes you gotta cry.
Well, you do that too. Absolutely.
There's space in
I'm
that.
no, trust me, I've been doing enough of that.
There's space in that. Oh, she said no.
No, no. We love you too.
All right. I want to make sure I'm honoring my 5. And I'm holding for 5.
We have 1 more minute.
Oh, no. It's
Oh
5.
no, there it is. That's 5. All right.
Downbeat.
Let's hop into this thing.
Downbeat. And so the name of this week's episode is Keep That Same Energy, right? Because we want to make sure that as we're going through all this process, all this emotion, all this sense of urgency that we're experiencing, we want people to keep that same energy, because it's very important. So as we all have to process and we're all dealing with it and experiencing it in different ways. When I say it, I mean this realization for a lot of people. And then people who have already seen it, the racism, right? And what that means and the different layers that come in that. So there's been this big wave recently of kind of epiphanies and people being tired and people being fed up. And then people just now realizing it, right? And so we wanted to address that. We wanted to address how organizations are responding to this. And we wanted to call organizations in, right? I don't want to call them out. We want to call them in so that we can continue to do that work. We are talking about dismantling racism. Cool. You made a commitment to dismantling racism. Cool. Black Lives Matter. Absolutely. Yes, we do. Keep that same energy, right? And so we'll
After
go through
Blackout Tuesday, keep that same energy.
Keep that same energy. Keep that same energy, right? And so we're wanting to make sure that as we go through this process and as we speak, as we share, that we are mindful, of course, always with the show and with what we're wanting to do, wanting to center truth, we want to center connection, we want to center healing. But in order to do that, we got to call it what it is. You have to say what it is. There will be no coddling of emotions, just so we can all get along and feel better, because that doesn't help us in the end. So what we're going to do is make sure we put a call out to everybody, just so you know. At the beginning, we'll start with that call to action. Keep that same energy, and then we'll go from there.
Same energy.
We got to keep that same energy. There you go. If you want to count it out for all my
rhythm. You want to count it out? Keep the same energy.
Yep,
We joke. We're very serious. This is not anything to mess around with.
So, Kristian, I'll go ahead and let you do your thing as our wonderful Oprah of opera, and then we can go from there.
On today's show, no. So if you're just tuning in and you're just joining us, again, I'm Kristian Roberts, Director of Education at the Dallas Opera. I'm here with my fantastic friend and colleague and co-host,
Quo Johnson, Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera.
Many of you have probably seen Quo on an international scale this week on the Opera America conferences. The panel discussion, she was on one yesterday and was on one last week as well. And so in light of recent events and the things that have been going on, we felt it important. Normally we pre-record. We'll pre-record a show, we'll have a good conversation with somebody or talk among ourselves, have a show to ourselves. But we decided today that it was really important, in light of everything that is going on, that we need to talk live. Mm-hmm. We are at a crucial moment in history, and as a study of history of myself, not only of music history, but of history, because music history is history. It reflects history. I guess I did, Cole. I went off on my tangent for a minute. But we need to talk about this week, and we need to talk about this week and the weight of everything that is going on right now. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Quo, because we both have things that we're going to discuss on this episode, topics we're going to tackle. But the first thing that I want to tackle is this week and the weight. That's the first topic in this. That's the first topic of this particular show. So, Quo, let's talk about this week. And the urgency that you talked about with organizations putting out statements. Let's talk about this.
So when we say this week and the weight, we are speaking to kind of this sense of a varying kind of helplessness, urgency, rage, all these emotions that we've been feeling collectively, globally, which is beautiful. For this past week. We'll get into later what that means for those of us who have already been feeling it, and how this changes some things for us and makes it a little heavier. But we want to start with kind of shout out to all of our organizations, the many organizations and many industries who provided a statement on racism. So many of our organizations, not all, but many organizations provided a statement on racism, on dismantling racism, on acknowledging that Black Lives Matter, on working to better our society and how we engage with each other. There are a bunch of different ways that people were saying different things. And so we wanted to, again, call in those organizations to kind of acknowledge that, yes, you've done those things, and then to make sure that people know that your statements will mean absolutely nothing unless you do something about it. So what ended up kind of happening as we saw this take place on Monday was this very frantic kind of race to make sure that you put out a statement about how much Black Lives Matter, which again, the support is wonderful. The fact that we're having a conversation is absolutely wonderful. Do not allow yourselves, ourselves, our communities to believe that we'll determine who is and who is not perpetuating the system based on a post that you put on social media, right? We don't get to diminish my experiences of my community, the pain, the cries, the strength of my community into whether or not you're down because you put a post on social media or because you created a statement. It's unfortunate that this is what had to bring this about, right? So we want to make sure that as our organizations create these statements, that one, we be mindful of the fact that you did it quickly, cool, but how many of our organizations were really prepared to issue a statement on dismantling racism? In all honesty, how many of our organizations have the staff, have the knowledge, have the experience, have the understanding, right? We have the intent, but I always want to make sure we understand that intent does not outweigh impact. Impact is more important than intent. We always want to acknowledge intent. I cannot do things with your intentions alone, right? So we want to be mindful of impact as well. So we want to call those organizations in to say that if you looked up and you were scrambling to try to find out what you were going to do and what you were going to say and what any of these terms mean, that's completely okay, right? It's okay to be honest. It's okay to realize that, hey, we need to do something. It's just a matter of being honest with self, being honest with others. And then if you looked up and realized that you didn't have enough Black people, right? We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter for this, and we'll expand into everybody, people of color, white, everybody, as we expand into that. If you looked up and realized you didn't have enough Black people on your staff, to say that Black Lives Matter in a way that was not you looking in from the outside, that's a problem, and you need to fix it. You need to work to fix it. Do not make excuses about it. Work to fix it. Be honest in your statements. Be deliberate in your statements. Do not be ambiguous. These things have happened, but how did you participate in it? Because we don't look up and things just happen, right? There's a way.
Not participate.
Or not participate, right?
Participate.
And so it's a matter of, what other resources are out there. Be honest, be accountable, and then we'll go from there. And so that's the kind of call into the table, into the work that I want to say to organizations. Thank you for putting out the statements. You are not alone. Know that you will be held accountable, because you don't just get to kind of hop in because you didn't want to be on the wrong side of not putting up a post. And then to all of the other organizations who are waiting and taking their time, that's completely okay as well. I assure you, what you do for others, what you do for bringing us all together will not be determined by your social media posts alone. That's what you do after this, what you do going forward, what you do when it will not add followers and it will not add views to your post is what's going to matter. What you do with your staff, what you do with your work. And that's for arts organizations, had education organizations we had so many organizations sending things. So we wanted to make sure that we brought that to light and that we let everybody know that empty commitments are not acceptable. They're not acceptable because at the end of the day, we're trying to make things better. And either you want to truly make things better or you don't, right? You pick one. There's no in between. You either truly want to make things better or you don't. And if you don't know how to make things better, it's okay. None of us really do. We're all working it out together. But you have to commit in order to do that. And then we wanted to kind of make sure that as we spoke with everyone and as we provided this information, or just insight on that, that we be mindful that if you have not done this work in the past, that is okay. Again, admit it, because we know, right? And I cannot believe what you say because I see what you do. So once we go from there, right? Once we start to see what you are doing, and that is for everyone. Once we start to see what you are doing, trust you are not alone in that work. But it is not enough just to put out a statement. Please be mindful of that. Know that your work starts now, right? The hard part starts now. Everybody being upset because of assumptions and because of misunderstandings, because of preference for their own comfort and coming at you and your organization, that starts, right? Welcome, Brother Sharkbait. And it's okay because we'll get through it together.
Ooh, ha, ha.
Hoo, aha, right?
Yeah. No. This is 100% on point. And I think the one thing that you also said that always resonates with me is we're calling in. The call
Mm-hmm.
to action is in. Calling folks out, that is necessary in some situations. But in this particular situation, calling in, and I think that's the reason why I told Quo today that I wanted to make sure that we talked about the just some of the frustrations that have come up. I know me personally, I'm glad that this conversation has happened. I've worked in the opera field for a long time. I've dedicated over literally half of my adult life to the classical arts. Okay, 12 directly to opera professionally for 12 years here at the Dallas Opera. And I have to tell you, I've seen things. When Tracy Wilson spoke yesterday on the panel for Opera America yesterday, when she said she's been around for a long time, she's seen some things, she's seen some changes, good changes, but she's seen things come a long way. But there's still things that need to be done. I'm summarizing what she says, not by any means quoting everything that she said.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that because there are some of us who have been standing in the gap and who have seen this and have been waiting for a day like this to come. And I will tell you that it has not been easy. I've heard the snide remarks. I've heard the little,
Mm-hmm.
why does it matter? I've heard there's the race card. I've heard just about every single thing that you can think of to gaslight and dismiss what somebody is talking to you about, their experience and their life. And I know several of my colleagues, instrumentalists,
Mm-hmm.
vocalists,
Mm-hmm.
ones who are fortunate enough to lucky enough to get stage directors positions or conductor positions or anything like that. We have a problem,
We have a
and we
problem,
have to fix it.
right?
Opera is a beautiful art form, but it is not exempt. The culture of opera is not exempt from the things that plague our society,
Yes.
and we need to be very clear about that. And we need to be okay with admitting that.
Yep.
And I mean the whole of we admitting that, and then saying, now what are we going to do?
What are we
Because
gonna do?
a statement is great, and I was
Yeah.
glad to see those things. But now the real work
Right.
begins. Now the real fight begins. And so this is not new for some of us. So if you run across people who are frustrated and who on me, like right now, I have two things going on right now. I said, on the one hand, this is fantastic. On the other hand, I'm frustrated that it took a pandemic and being locked away in your house, forced to look at a screen to see a man whose life was taken when people have been saying that's been happening for years.
Yeah. And not
There have
even
been plenty
saying,
of us.
they've been showing that it's been happening for
They've
years,
been
right?
showing that it's been happening for years. But I have
Okay.
a friend of mine, Ashley Watkins. I'm gonna quote you a little bit here, but you said something to the tune of, "I had a feeling if we weren't in lockdown, people would not have seen this, and we wouldn't have seen this reaction." And I can't help but believe, but that is true, because again, we cannot believe what you say because we see what you do. That's a loose quote from James Baldwin. So this is not an attack. This is not a berating anyone. This is saying, understand that if you get some people who say, I'm tired, I do not want to discuss this. I'm tired.
Mhm.
Google it. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. Understand where that's coming from. It's coming from years of people being exhausted and our lives being like this, having to live our lives like this. Understand that when you find somebody who is angry about this, why they are angry about this. When you are upset about property being destroyed, and that's the first thing you go to rather than what caused the property to be destroyed, the riot, I mean, whatever caused the riot, the root cause. Understand that somebody's going to be frustrated about that because what caused it was injustice and murder. And that is unfortunate and it's sad. People say, Kristian, are you angry? I said, no, I'm sad. And so I say that because that a tragedy had to spark this. And the entire world is watching. The entire world is looking. There are people all over the world that are literally saying, this is not right. What are y'all going to do about it? Fix this. So we have to understand that our organizations aren't exempt from that. Right. And that we create this beautiful, wonderful art form that has a great way of bringing people together. And I say that because I've seen it with my own eyes. But we can't be in that bubble, that little utopia for some people, when it's not such a utopia for other people.
Right.
So we need to be mindful and I want to make it clear. I want to make it very clear what I'm saying here, because God in heaven knows I am not trying to be offensive. I am not trying to anger anyone or ruffle feathers. What I'm trying to do is say, it's time to call in. It's time to be called in. And understand that this affects the Black community differently.
Yes.
We have to deal with these kind of tragedy and this kind of pain, and we've had to deal with it for a very long time.
Yes.
But still go to work and function. Still get on the stage and sing if we got the contract. Still get in the pit and play. Still direct the show. Whatever it is, we've still had to do that and do it well. Otherwise, it gets us, we don't get another job after that. So so that brings me to my next part of the next segment, the next part of this. Call a thing a thing.
Call a thing a thing.
Call it what it is. What are we calling it, Quo?
It's racism. That's what it is.
It's racism. Period.
And that's what it is. And if that word alarms you, if that word kind of shocks or hurts, or your immediate kind of response is one that is defensive, know that is okay. I invite you to continue to lean into courage, right? Lean into that discomfort. Racism is real. This nation was built on it, right? We want to be mindful of what that means for historical context and how that system, that structure, that social structure of racism and race has affected how people are able to access resources. Point blank and period. And if we want to look at the numbers, we can, right? But we are,
want to look at the historical documents, we can.
Look at the context, we can. We are beyond the question of whether or not it is racism or whether or not racism plagues our society. We are now in the phase of what do we do about it, right? Where do we check ourselves? Where do we do internal searching? Where do we do internal work? Where do we do external work? Where do we do communal work so that we can get to the point where we are healing, right? But we cannot do that if we do not call it what it is. If we do not call it what it is within our own industry, right? We're here for it. Dallas Opera here for the arts. We want to make sure that we all continue to enjoy beautiful, wonderful work that Dallas Opera does, and knowing that it can be better once we include more people, right? And once we include more people in all of the arts, every sector of society, all of education, all of health, all of wealth, everything. So we calling it what it is racism. That is what it is. And as we go through our steps, as we go through our show, and as we kind of have more conversations, I want to be mindful of what that is. Because some of us in society have been afforded the opportunity to pretend like it's something else. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not.
And there's no in between. There's no in between with this. You know, I said neutral is a position, and quite frankly, it's the wrong one. Because there is no neutrality when it comes to something that is literally a matter of life and death. And
then as we consider racism, as we consider what it is and what it's done to our society, again, we were built on it. How many of us can kind of envision a city, a world, right? Dallas Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation. Shout out to Jerry Hawkins. How many of us can envision a city, envision our community without racism? When it affects infrastructure, when it affects how our school, when it affects education, when it affects health, when it affects our children, when it affects so many things, how many of us can envision what that truly, truly looks like? And so we want to be mindful of that as racism has robbed us of so many things. This comes
Yes,
down to whether or not you are connecting with another human being as a human being. And that's what racism
definitely.
prevents us from doing, right? How many people,
Racism
even right now,
robs.
how many people right now are saying you're making that up? You just want to say these other things, or you're just complaining about these other things. So I'm a human being telling you that so many people are ignoring so much of what is happening because that default, right? That default is to ignore racism. I don't see color. Yeah, yes, you do. I'm not clear. Yes, you do. And it's okay. We want to get from I don't see color to I see you. You are beautiful. I see your strength. You're a fellow human being. Let's move this together. That's where we want to get to. So denying it, being upset about it, does doesn't do anything to help, right? The only thing it does is kind of perpetuate the fact that, oh, okay, that's what you want to be comfortable. So you kind of retreat back into you're making it up. We're not making it up. All right. We're not making it up. The pseudoscientists who made it up.
They definitely
The
made it up.
pseudoscientists who
Okay.
created it made it up, but the effects are very real. The
Oh, and if
belief,
you want who one of the scientists was, look up Carl von Linnaeus.
right?
Yeah, it's
The
ridiculous.
beliefs
Not a drop of science in it.
the beliefs are very real. The assumptions are very real. The biases that come out of it are very real. The kind of default to dismiss when someone says Black Lives Matter, and then you say, oh, but what about those criminals, those Black criminals, or those people who are doing these things, as if somebody else's choice or whatever decision they made to do a criminal act should decide how much my life matters, because it's a
Mhm.
matter of yes or no. That's the question, right? So if you are defaulting and dismissing when someone says Black Lives Matter or whatever matters, you're dismissing that by trying to create a kind of entire or a whole, or trying to dismiss that by blaming somebody else and generalizing. Trust, there are a lot of things that we all have in our histories, within our cultures, that will allow us to dismiss everything about everyone. So let's stop doing that, right? Because
Absolutely.
unless you're going to look me in the face and tell me that my life does not matter, then face yourself, and then we'll go from there. So it's just a matter of us making sure that we're mindful of that and what that means going forward, and then that we are not defaulting to other subjects. For this, we're talking about dismantling racism. So that's what we're going to focus on. Not that there are not other issues, there are, right? And
Plenty.
not that other lives do not matter, they do. Right now, this is what we're focusing on right here. Because the default is to ignore race and to start talking about other issues, right? We want to talk about women's rights. We want to talk about LGBTQ plus, which is fine. Fold that into as Black, right? We want to talk about women. We're talking about Black women. LGBTQ plus, we're talking about Black, and what that means. Because in the end, as we face all of these issues and all of these marginalized communities, there's still a disparity according to race. And that is because this nation is built on the fallacy of racial hierarchy and human values. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge that, so that we can all understand that we're all valuable, right? There is no superiority, there's no inferiority, right? There is no one group that's just better at doing things than everybody else. No, we spoke about it before. It's a matter of advantage, and then it's a matter of what happens and how we work through that going forward. That was a long
I
spiel,
think
but
I got it. No, I was gonna. Hey, I let you do your thing. You know me. I don't. When you're talk what the old folks say is when you're talking good, I don't. Okay. Um. So we get a lot of questions, and I'm gonna try to look through the chat to see if anything has come up. Um, let's see here before I continue on my tangent.
on tangent.
Before I go on my tangent, um, just to make sure, I think someone asked what can organizations do. Hold on, Promethean Arts, was that you?
What are they gonna say?
Promethean artist.
They're like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me. I'm sure it's a question that can be kind of.
I think it might have got. I feel like it got lost.
But if it
Sorry,
was,
guys.
a question, we can answer it, or we can provide kind of guidance in what that means. Yeah, in
Yeah,
order to,
we're happy to take questions throughout this y'all.
as I do my spiels.
I saw the question earlier and I meant to
I'll say, yeah,
memorize it, and then I started preaching a little bit. So, apologies for that. Um,
and so
Promethean Arts, ask it again so I can, because
they
I
said,
lost it.
ask it again. So, and as they were to ask it again, we want to be mindful of what that looks like, and then we want to center human connection. That's what we want to center. We want to
Yes.
center healing. We want to center intent. But we also have to understand
Woo.
that in how we live and how this nation is structured, look at the disproportionate representation in so many different things that we face, right? From
Yes.
incarceration to all of our senators, right? From, poverty to those who hold most of the wealth in the nation. And it's not because your family worked hard. Not that your family did not work hard. It is not solely because your family worked hard. So we want to be mindful of what that means when we understand that none of us got where we are because of what we've done, and that so many things have come before us. And then what it looks like when we acknowledge that, one, we're on stolen land, right? That is always a
Built by
big
stolen labor.
thing. We're on stolen land. This land was already being cultivated by sovereign nations who were here first. So we'll start there. And then our nation was built by stolen labor, right? From stolen people who were stolen from their homes and then brought here, and forced to not even and forced into horrible conditions to work. That is the truth. And so as we look at that truth, we want to look at what that means when somebody is 3/5 of a person, and how that extends into whether or not they can own land, how that extends into whether or not those who had the land before and were shoved aside forcefully, those who were removed forcefully, those who were killed, what that means when you attempted to erase an entire community and you're still doing so. We are still doing so. And so we want to be mindful of that. But I'm sorry, you said they had a question. Go for it. Go
They
for
had
it.
they had a question, and I figured we'd go ahead and toss it in real quick before we got to other parts. Um, Promethean artist asks, what can organizations do to help keep the conversation going and to see real change come about? This, quite frankly, what you just said, you, you have to keep the conversation going. You have to be intentional about keeping the conversation going. Um, you have to make it a part of your daily business. It can't be the business as usual. Part of the business as usual is making sure that this conversation is part of the business as usual. And then the action that comes behind that is part of the business as usual. So when you're discussing budgets, when you're discussing artists, when you're discussing contracting, when you're discussing education and community engagement, when you're discussing civic practice, this has to be in it. Every single
Mhm.
thing that you, when you're discussing philanthropy, fundraising, the whole thing, this has to be a part of the business.
Mhm.
Equity, diversity, and inclusion. Purposely fighting against, well, not fighting against, but making sure that you are taking steps necessary to be truly inclusive. That has to be a part of daily business as usual.
Mhm.
Well, I know you got more because you do this with organizations.
And so it's a matter of how do you keep it going forward? I would say start with research. Research your history, research the history of your city, research the history of your organization, and make sure that as you research, you are also reaching out to other organizations who do this, who are experts in this, because it is not the conversations that we're used to having. Again, you start bringing up race, and so many people default to something else, or they tell you that it doesn't exist, or racism doesn't exist. So make sure you're reaching out to organizations. Organizations have resources. They've been putting out resources. Race equity is one of them. Art equity is one of them. Race Forward. We have so many different organizations who are doing this work because they realize that we're suffering because we still believe we're supposed to be separated, and we are not. So start with that. Start with the research. Start with education. Start with listening to others, right? Do your own research and looking at other narratives. Again, the issues that we're facing right now and the tragedy that we're facing right now is not new to the African American community.
No.
Go look at some of those stories, and you'll find that it is not new and that it has been happening long before it was America's favorite pastime to find something to do after church. You'll research that as well. Look up
Go look at
Jim
that.
Crow, right? Look up the Jim Crow laws. Look up other documents that were created just to kind of show superiority over people of color, specifically Black people. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful that these things are there. They've just been kind of covered up. We have to do the research, and then we have to do the internal work ourselves to consider how we have been ignoring the voices of others, how we have been ignoring the perspectives of others and the experiences of others. So if you find yourself immediately defaulting, right, to no, you're not telling the truth. How do you know? What do you mean? When were you there? So we want to be mindful of that. So do the research, do the education, keep the conversation going. This should not be an option. You should
Yes.
be mindful as if everybody was your friend. Would you want your friend to suffer? This
Yes.
should not be optional. It is not optional
That's why
for
I said
me.
it has to be a part of your daily business.
Your daily
It
business. This
cannot
should
just
be.
be, it has to be part of your business practices.
And for
Period.
me and myself, my role for the Dallas Opera is the company culture manager. So it's a matter of making sure that what we do and that everything we do is completely a part of the culture. When I say a part of the culture, it is the way we do our work. So if we're focused on creatively doing things and creativity is a part of the culture, we'll make sure we can write on the walls, we can do all these things. We are focusing on ensuring that equity is a part of the culture, that we're looking at whose voice is not here. We're looking at, I do not know everything. I, as a white leader, do not know everything. I, as a Black leader, do not know everything. We need other people here. I, as a Hispanic leader, we do not know everything. So we need other people in. It's a matter of, again, calling people in so that we can work together collaboratively. So do that. And everything you're looking at, look at it through racial equity. You have to apply that lens. Otherwise, we default into the dominant, and the dominant is a matter of superiority over everybody else. And we don't want that. That's what we're trying to fight. So that is how a lot of organizations can start that work. We start there and then go from there. If we find that we're comfortable, extremely comfortable, we feel so good about this conversation. Teresa Ruth Howard said it last week. We feel so good about this conversation. We're like, yeah, and you didn't involve the people who are most affected by it. And I don't mean involve in saying, okay, well, what do you need? I mean, tell me what you want. This isn't a matter of you as a leader dictating to others. This is you as a leader listening. This is you as a leader coming together so you can find out what others need so that you can change what you're doing, because you're not going to be able to just fold it in. You have to change the things that you're doing so that you can serve other communities, so those communities can feel a sense of ownership for you and your work, you and your organization, you and your art form, or whatever your product is. You can't expect people to just simply appreciate what you're doing just because you tried, but you didn't really try because you didn't really want to be uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable, right? Look at that. Look at what it means to be uncomfortable, and look at the grace and the energy and the connection that comes out of facing that discomfort and connecting with somebody else. So I'd say for all organizations, that's where we can start. Start there, and then we'll go from there.
I also and that's why I kept saying make it a part of your daily business, because
Mhm.
everything that Quo is saying is it has to start from within. It has to start from self. So
Yep.
even if you don't see your organization moving in this direction, you can still go research yourself. You can still educate yourself. You can still go and look at all those sources that Quo named. You can still go and do these things for yourself. We have to get to know ourselves. We have to get the self-examination portion of this intact, because that's what a lot of people don't want to do because they're afraid of what they're going to see. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. It is a very real fear. It is a very real fear, because I've had people tell me, I cannot believe how uncomfortable I am with this particular situation, and I cannot believe how long other people have had to be so uncomfortable, and I'm just now realizing how horrible this is. Very real. That's a very real thing.
Yeah.
You know what? You can work on that. And so I say that when the self-examination, I will also say we're going to get into the part now where we need to talk about, how we heal.
Right.
That's the last part of this, because one thing I don't want to ever do in the show, and I know Quo doesn't ever want to do, is for it to just seem like we just on here, preaching, and then everybody feels good for a sermon and then goes back into the world and does nothing or feels terrible or anything like that. You're gonna feel terrible through some of this
because
You're gonna feel uncomfortable because it is terrible. It's horrifying. But
doesn't make you terrible, right? We're not terrible. It is terrible. So we feel terrible because suddenly so many of us are realizing how terrible it is.
And it's rough. And understand that, again, people who are affected by this directly have to carry it differently than you do. And it's more weight to do it. Even to come on here today, Quo and I had to have a real conversation about how we were going to approach this, how we were going to talk about this, and just making sure that we said things in ways that are helpful and that are productive. And so when I get to the part about how we heal, this is not taking a pill. This is not taking a little syrup, or something like that. This is not that, no bubble gum flavored, syrup, anything like that. This is not what's going to heal this. What's going to heal this is self-examination. What's going to heal this is leaning into your discomfort. What's going to heal this is making a choice to do this.
Yes.
What's going to heal this is that, as Quo said before, educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
What's going to heal this is, and this has been my biggest phrase when people ask me, what can they do? I said, say something.
Say something. And then I would also say that as you make a choice, again, when you make a choice, make the choice to commit to being uncomfortable. It's okay. Make a choice to commit to being uncomfortable, not a choice to, I'm going to say something and I'm going to try. And then someone may call you out. Someone may call you in. People will respond different ways. Do not expect cookies just because you made a choice. Do not expect someone to congratulate you just because you're doing something. Some people will. Do not expect those things because it's not enough, right? That's just the starting point. People can acknowledge without applauding. So that's completely okay. But when you make a choice, you need to set your intentions and you need to stick to them. You have to have the resolve to do it because you may get a lot of different responses. Some people may be like, thank you very much. Other people might be like, I can't stand you. You are a liar. Go away. And you have to be willing to kind of take that on the chin and say, I understand that, or not respond at all, but then show them, right? Speak with your action. Show them. You will not be congratulated and coddled the moment that you try something by everyone. You're going to make mistakes. We will all make mistakes. This is a matter of kind of getting rid of that idea, that cultural norm of perfectionism, and being honest and being transparent. Our nation has never been without racism. So as we dismantle something that has always existed in our nation, it is not going to be comfortable, but it is absolutely necessary. So again, set your intent. Make your choice, stick to it regardless of what other people are telling you. Do not assume that your intentions are more important than the impact that you place upon other people. Be willing to learn after you've done something. Should someone say, hey, please stop saying voice for the voiceless or things like that, because people are not voiceless. White people have just been ignoring us. So when people say things like that, take that into account. Ask, how can I do better? Place yourself in a situation that does not make you the expert, that does not make you the most powerful, that does not make you the decision maker, right? That'll be a very different space for a lot of people, especially when coming to people of color or when trying to heal with people of color, especially with the Black community. If people don't trust you, they have a reason not to. Maybe not you individually, right? So do not take it as an individual thing.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because I was wanting to emphasize that.
Do not take it as an individual. This is not a matter of individual struggle versus centuries of institutional racism, right? Those don't go together. Those do not equate. And so what we want to make sure that we're looking at is that you're not seeking equality. You don't expect to be treated like everybody else, but you're seeking equity. We've spoken about that before. Not the same
Justice.
thing. You're seeking justice. You're seeking fairness, and that you're giving space for others to be able to kind of work out whatever they have to work out as they come to you with trust. You have to earn these things um, because we're in a position and we've inherited a place where our forefathers were not very mindful of everybody and what was going to happen as this nation kind of changed. Did brilliant things, brilliant, fascinating things. They did not care. So we want to be mindful of what that means as we take on the weight of fixing it. Know that, again, that your individual discomfort as we are realizing all the things that are happening and as people have this sense of helplessness, I don't know what to do. How can I help? Know that, again, Black people have been experiencing that. And then know that you cannot demand immediate action without taking the proper steps to lay the foundation for healing. Because what that immediately turns into is just you hijacking other things so that you don't feel helpless anymore. And that's not okay.
And that you're trying to seek comfort. You're trying
You're
to get
trying
back
to
to your
seek
comfort
comfort.
level as fast as you possibly can. You might not realize that's what's happening.
Right, but that is what you just, I don't like this feeling, so I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
I will silence other people. I don't care what they look like because I'm going to do something. And then, that's natural. It's a natural response. Do not prioritize your comfort over somebody else's life, over somebody else's experience. Do not do it. If you feel
Yes.
uncomfortable, then lean into that discomfort because once we are in a place where we're kind of moving and vibing together, it's much more rewarding. There's much more
Yeah.
connectivity. There is much more progress. It's more beautiful. It's like we're gonna go back to music, right? It's like that piece where I'm uncomfortable with this and I don't think I can do it this way. And then once you find that you work out what you need to do for your part, while everybody else works out what they need to do, you carry what you're supposed to carry and understand what you're supposed to do so that you can move along with everybody else. And it's just beautiful. So that's where we want to get to. That
And it
was my
takes all kinds. Yeah,
takes.
but it's needed because it takes all kinds. And I also want to say this too. We talk about holding space for people. Be sure to hold space for people. There are some people who have never really had space held for them, and you
Mhm.
have to remember that and be mindful of that. Um, the well, in the name of the episode today, I guess in the name of the episode, keep
Keep
that
that same
same
energy.
energy, the same
Everybody,
energy that you had last week and that you had on
yep.
Monday. When it
Tell
gets
them keep
tough,
that
you're
same
still going to
energy.
have to keep that same energy
When it
because
gets tough, yeah,
yeah,
and your donors
it's
start looking
real.
at you, your board members start looking at you because they're probably from different generations, with different experiences and different expectations. Like when people start looking at you, keep that same energy. That's where
Yeah.
that trial is going to come. And it's
And
okay. Know that you
also,
don't have to do it by yourself.
no, not at all. And be mindful of that generational thing
Hmm.
because it's going to happen.
It's
And there are
going to
things that are
happen.
going to have to be explained, and there are things that you're going to have to talk through with folks, and understand that that's part of the work. That's part of when you're trying to dismantle a system that has not served everyone, that's
Yep.
not served the whole of us.
Right.
And I, for one, that if we have systems that are not serving the whole of humanity, I don't want anything to do with them.
Mhm.
So I think that we have to understand that, and we have to come to that knowledge. And then what I would also say, I say again, self-examination is crucial right now.
Mhm.
It is very, very crucial right now. You really have to be looking inward right now and asking yourself a question because racism is not something that's just over there and it just popped up. Ooh,
Yeah.
there it is. Oh, where did that come from? It's been around for a very long time. And so please understand that it took a long time for it to accumulate
Yeah.
and acquire like this. We've been in this for a very long time, but we do not have to spend the same amount of time getting rid of it because it
Mhm.
causes harm. It
Mhm.
literally causes death,
Right.
and that is serious.
Literally. And
There are
then,
people there are people right now who are gathering to mourn somebody right now. There are people who that we have to acknowledge that and understand that. But understand, it wasn't the first time it happened, and it wasn't the first time that happened in that way. It wasn't the first time that something happened, that it happened. In this case, it just happened to be at the hands of a cop. But understand that it's been happening other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And when Quo said at the beginning of this is not just harmful to Black people.
Mm-hmm.
This is harmful to the whole of society. I want you
Everybody.
to understand something in our history. When you are kept in a space where you're not talking to other people, or you not met other people, you're being robbed of experiences of talking to people and getting to know people and loving on different people. Our differences are what make us fantastic together. And if that doesn't move you morally in your heart to do it, understand that it's good for business. You can look at the data and the research. It is absolutely good for business. We know that teams are more productive when they're more diverse. They produce more product. And I mean, come on, this is the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
I mean, and we need to understand that. And I hope that it moves from an authentic place and a moral place. But if nothing else, I was joking with Quo. I was like, well, if nothing else moves you, know that it's going to help your pockets. That's a terrible. I need to stop.
Yeah,
But
don't focus so much on the helping pockets part,
don't
but
focus.
it's the
No, yeah,
truth. It is
it's
the
the
truth,
truth.
but it is the truth, and it will be the truth because as you have different people with different experiences, you have more people who can speak to whether or not you should say things like voice for the voiceless, or whether or not you can say things like we are here to help, so that your communities, as opposed to our communities, you
Yes,
have people who can provide that insight because of their experiences, in addition to yours. This is not a replacement of you. This is just removing you from the most important to everybody else so that we're all together. And so I always want to make sure that as we encourage people to say something, also listen and observe. You'll find different things, right? You'll find different reasons, different epiphanies that'll come. We had to have a law be passed to say that my hair can be worn naturally. Do you know what that means? When you look up and people tell you because the color of your skin makes you undesirable, makes you unintelligent, you lack intelligence, you're lazy, all of these things. So we want to be mindful of generalizations. We want to be mindful of what somebody saying something without actually experiencing that. We want to be mindful of what it means when we ourselves kind of kick back into comfort because we want to keep our world as it is. Know that our world as it is not okay. We need to make it better. That's going to be uncomfortable. And then as we go through this process, and we ask that you keep that same energy,
yes.
that we make sure that we're doing that together, right? And that it will look different. You have to envision what you're doing looking differently with different people, because that is what encourages us to go out to seek others or to go in to seek something different, to seek something greater.
No, I couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, now's the time, folks. It's been past time, but now's the time. And the thing is, we always want to leave on positive, and I think what Quo said was positive. And I really do believe that our differences are what make us great, particularly when we come together with those differences and create something as cool as the operatic art form is, and any art form for that matter, and any project where people are working together. The things that could get solved if we could get rid of this problem, and if we could get to the root of this problem and root it out. I can imagine a world where it doesn't exist. It's hard at times. It's very hard at times, but I can imagine it, and it's beautiful. It's
It's
absolutely
beautiful.
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 So, we've been on almost an hour, and and we thought that
Yeah.
that is exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think I saw any more. I don't think I saw any more questions. If I missed something, please feel free to you can
Mhm.
contact us directly. Go and I both. I'm actually using my personal Instagram right now, but you can direct message me. Quo has one as well. You can direct message her. You can direct message the Dallas Opera. We will figure it
Right.
out. If you have, questions, or need resources, Quo has a slew of them. Okay, she has a slew of them. That is what she trained on. If you need, any kind of guidance, like I said, that's what those resources are for. If you have resources that you want to share,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
put them in the comment section,
Hmm.
because this is what Quo says. We're together.
We're doing
This
this
has to
together.
happen together. We're
And I
doing it
think
together.
it's important that we're all hurting together, of course, different levels, different ways for different reasons. But that pain has resounded, right, throughout the entire world. There is no going back. People know it. We feel it. You feel something. Something is wrong. It hurts.
And
Let's
something is
heal,
different about this time.
right? It's something. Let's heal so that we prevent it from hurting this way, the same way in the future. There's no reason for us to go back. And then, so as we do that, we have to make sure for positive notes, like, again, you're not in this alone. We'll do it together, but we have to face truth, right? Not
Yes.
how you feel, not your emotions, truth, right? Not your comfort, not what your grandmother told you and taught you, truth.
Truth.
We want to face truth. We want to face facts. We want to stop making excuses because either we're going to do this work or we will not. Your discomfort is not an excuse. I don't know
No.
what to do. That's not an excuse. That is the truth, right? But then it's a matter of what do you do after that? I don't feel comfortable doing this. I'm backing off. No, absolutely not. Right. We want you to keep that same energy. And then, as we've said
That
before, know that you
same
don't have to
energy.
do it alone. Know that we are working towards something that's going to benefit all of us. It will not erase you, it will not dismiss you. This is going to ensure that others can kind of join you so that you can share what makes you awesome and so that you can appreciate what makes others awesome as well. So, those are my
Absolutely.
positive notes for this
Positive note.
episode.
Well, folks, I think we have enough, and now there's the call to action. We put several calls to action throughout this. Quo has given advice on what organizations to do. I have put my 2 cents in. Um, the call to action is to keep that same energy, the
Mhm.
same energy you had on Tuesday, the same energy you've been having for the past week and a half, 2 weeks. Keep the same energy because you're going
Right.
to need it, and we can do it. But the thing is, it will not happen if you don't keep that same energy. That's the truth. Because it's going to get tiring and you're going to get tired, but it has to be done.
Mhm.
Now is the time. So, folks, we want to thank you for joining us today. Uh, it's always a pleasure. We thank you for tuning in. We thank you for all the wonderful comments that people have been leaving for us. Like I said, any questions, anything, leave them in the comment section. If you have resources, leave them in the comment section. We will
Mhm.
get resources to you. Quo is fantastic about that. We want to thank Dallas Opera for the platform as usual, TDO Network for the platform. Thank you, everyone. Thank for the support of the senior staff. Very much appreciated. And the actual and all the staff. We thank
Understand.
you
Yeah,
very much.
everybody.
Some of y'all on here too. So thank you so very much to our staff as well. And without any further delay, we will sign off and we will be back with another episode next week, same time.
See you later. Bye.